Frank, you were trained originally as a modernist. What made you go beyond that or develop your own personal style?
You know, I grew up in a Jewish family, and I studied Talmud. And the Talmud starts with why. And I guess I've got that kind of thing built into me that I always question everything. I think what it does is it leads me to respond to the times we're in. I mean, so if whatever I was taught, if it no longer applies, I'm willing to move on. I found that architecture was involved with, it was like a rote, you could say. It had to be functional. It had to meet budget requirements. You had to work with the client. You have to, and yeah, we had to do that. But then what? I said. But then what? And the then what was like, what does an artist do facing a white canvas? It's then what? What do I do now? And so I looked for ways to take it somewhere. I was interested in the context of our world, which was filled with movement. It was like an intuitive thing, and I just kept looking there, making things. And then when the guys started doing the postmodern, I got sort of angry with that. Why do we have to go back there? We've done that already. I thought you guys beat that one up. And you know, there was, and some of my best friends were starting to do it. It just freaked me out. And I thought architecture is anthropomorphic. I thought that if you're going to look back, I got mad. I said, if you're going to look back, why don't you look back before man? Fish are 300 million years. This was intuitive. I didn't plot this in any way. It just came out. It was an intuitive, kind of off-the-cuff remark. And then, so after I said it, I said, yeah, why not? So I started looking at fish drawings, and Hiroshiga, the Japanese woodcut fish, which are the carp, and they're so beautiful and fluor. And I started to look at them as architecture. And I did drawings of fish. I mean, they're funny drawings. They're not anywhere near Hiroshiga. But, and then I started using it. It started to become an emblem against what the other guys were doing. It was against postmodernism. Basically, why not be inspired by nature? And there's infinite form in nature, and there are no rules, because there are enough rules in architecture to keep you on the straight and narrow, as it were. So you're not going to fall out of space. Buildings have to pass muster with the building department, the engineering, and they do have to be budget conscious, and they do have to be buildable in a reasonable length of time, and they have to, I think, respect their neighbors, and they have to give something. And how do you do it? I mean, you solve all those problems, and you're socially responsible, and I think you do all of that as a matter of course, but that doesn't necessarily create the form. That's not the end of it. And I think there's more to it, and that's the artistic side, if you want. And it's not that I'm claiming that I'm an artist. I think I'm an architect. I think architecture is an art, and even though it has plumbing in it. In the length of time I've known you, how many great buildings have been built in the world? You know, you can count them practically. So architecture is very a minor field in the scheme of things. And when one or two miracles happen, like Ronchamp, and then I suppose Bilbao was my miracle, and I don't put them on the same plane by saying that.
Do you see Bilbao as a culmination of a process that you've gone through in some way? Or is it a watershed or turning point?
I thought it was just the beginning of something.
Beginning of something.
Yeah, for me it was a beginning of something.
I guess your house was the first fully realized design of your new kind of thinking, is that true? Where it was quite clear what you were after for the first time, fully. I mean, what is your feeling about it? That's 78, 79.
My house was the first building that I didn't have to please anybody but my wife. And she egged me on, and I did things. There was a freedom that I'd never had before. Now, you know, it was only $40,000 worth because I didn't have any more money than that. So it was a small, I always try to tell students that it doesn't take much. You know, if you let yourself go, you can find ways to do things with small projects. And it was a remodeling, it wasn't a full building. I was trying things there that I was thinking about. Now people want to do the Bilbao effect, and I turn them down because I don't believe you can do that.
What's the Bilbao effect?
I don't know. Bilbao was a success, and
I see, to repeat that, yeah.
And I don't think you can just walk down the street and do it. It takes a client, it takes a commitment, it takes
Well, it was a very special site, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Quite extraordinary site, yeah.
It took a commitment by the Basque culture, the Basque government. They asked for a Sydney Opera House. They actually said that. They said, we want something as powerful as Sydney Opera House.
When you go into a city like, say, Bilbao, which, you know, is a culture you're not familiar with.
Right.
It's a very particular culture, Basque culture. What clues do you look for in terms of the architecture?
I do pick up a lot. I mean, I'm good at that. That's what I'm really good at, is this, I've got some kind of visual memory. I scan, I think, the places I'm in and look at everything. Look at the way they dress, look at the way they walk, look at the kind of cars they drive, look at the, you know, and I pick it all up and look at their buildings. And I try and get a sense of their society, their attitudes. I spend time with the people, talk politics. I sort of get a pretty good sense of what's going on. You know, the process of doing a building, it takes so long that there's enough time to go back and forth and really learn what the scene is. Where I go for inspiration is painting. And
what particular painting? What particular kind? Any kind.
Anything that I get, and then I get excited, and there's paintings. There's evidence of my falling in love with certain paintings, and then I play off them. And I always tell my students, when they get stuck, they should go to an art gallery and just look at painting.
What is that process of refining from the first idea? I mean, how does that work? Is that also purely intuitive, or?
Well, I build very precise models of the site and the program.
A series of models.
Yeah, and then we start fantasizing, and I do sketches, and then Edwin or Craig or whoever actually builds my sketches within but they're real. They're within the context of the program and the volumes and stuff. I've learned that in order to survive, I have to get started, because I ain't gonna get there unless I do. And then once I start, it's rolling, and I keep changing it, and moving it, and adding to it. And sometimes I throw it all out and start over again. And we do it in models and with sketches on the side. So I go home and sketch. My sketches are almost like a criticism of the day's work. We'll get somewhere in the model, and then I'll get that pretty fixed in mind. Then I go home and sketch. I'll come back the next day with a whole bunch of responses to my critique. And then we put that on the model, and we just keep going. So I look at it like climbing Mount Everest, you know, with peatons. You put one in at a time, and then you get up there, and then you go. And it's like that. It feels like that too, because it also feels like you're going to fall off. Yeah. And a lot of times you do.
And there's an inertia.
Yeah, you fall. Well, I I get to a point where I can't stand it, you know, and then it just goes down some path that I know ain't going to fly.
This process you described in Bilbao, where you soak up the material, a lot of architects, when they see a site, they get a hit immediately, some intuitive hit about what should go there.
I do, yeah.
You do as well?
Yeah.
So this goes on simultaneously then?
But, yes, but the first drawing I did for Bilbao, the first day, looks a lot like the building. But that doesn't matter, see, it gives you, that's the first piéton. To get that into real life is a lot harder. I mean, you gotta get the program, you gotta get all the things in it. You know, otherwise you'd make a shell and just jam stuff in it. You can't do, I can't do that. So, it's like you've set your sights on a target. Now you know where you're trying to go to, but then I never know that's where I'm going to. So that's almost an intuitive thing. I draw it, I don't look at it again. In fact, the Bilbao sketch I only pulled out when Kosha started doing the book on. She pulled it out, and she said, "When did you do this sketch?" And it was on the hotel stationery the first night I stayed there. So I said, "Well, that's the first sketch I did, and it looks a lot like the building."
But the original, that first sketch idea did not constrict your thinking about the building?
No, I never looked at it again until that. So there is this magical thing that happens. I don't know how it happens, but like I just went to Princeton and looked at the site for the new project, and I was sitting at lunch and I gave them a sketch of what I gave them the sketch, my first sketch. Now, how close it comes to the end, I don't know.
Tell me about the evolution of this CATIA program that you, I mean, how important was it in realizing what you wanted to do?
In the Vitra Furniture Museum, I was trying to make a curved stairway, a spiral. And so the spiral had a roof on it, and the roof warped. And I couldn't figure out how to draw it. And I tried all the tricks in descriptive geometry I'd learned in college, but I wasn't that good at it, you know. But it's built, but it's got a kink in it, and you can see it in the building. And so we could never close the gap for how to tell a guy to build it. And I asked my people if they knew any way to avoid that problem in the future, because I thought I was going to get into more trouble like that. And Jim got called,
Jim Glimpf.
Glimpf called somebody at IBM, and they sent us Rick Smith, who had worked in the aircraft industry. And Rick taught Jim how to, what we needed, and put us in touch with CATIA. And we did the, we were tentative about it at first. We didn't quite know. We were doing that big fish sculpture in Barcelona. And SOM was the engineer, Skidmore engineer, doing the engineering. And they did it all in CAD. And they sent the drawings to Barcelona. And the guy that was building the towers and stuff was an Italian guy, Massimo Colomban, who owned a company called Prima Stilisa that's very big in curtain wall all around the world. And they'd done Foster's work and Philip Johnson's work and blah, blah, all high-rise, a lot of high-rise. And they wanted to build this sculpture. And so they took they started trying to build it with the CAD drawings, and Massimo, the owner, called us and said, "I don't know how to build it from these drawings." He said, "We're not going to get there." And so we told him, we're experimenting with this CATIA program. and we'd never really used it, and maybe that's the solution. So he came over, and we showed him what we were doing, and he said, absolutely, this is it. So he bought himself a workstation and all the stuff back in Italy, and then we did everything by modem, I guess, at that time. I don't know if they still do that, but we sent it over the telephone array. I think now they do it on the internet. But, and he called us one day, and he said, perfecto. And so he became a believer and then transferred all his stuff into that program.
So this gave you an instrument that allowed you to realize your imagination, in a sense.
But it made it precise so you could, I mean, I could spin out the imagination, I could do that, but how to get it built? This allowed us to demystify, I called it, the shapes so that the builder could build them with confidence.
Well, that was a huge leap forward for you.
That was a big deal, yeah. For us it was.
Yeah.
But not many other architects needed it because they weren't doing this kind of thing. We thought it was a thing that we would only be able to use, but we've now worked with executive architects on several buildings in Europe. And when we finish, they adopt the whole thing and they do other work. So they do more normal work using this system.
Now, in the sense that you have all the tools you need to be able to do what you want to do.
I'm going to make square buildings.
I mean, where do you see this going? It's, what's the next evolution?
I don't know. See, if I knew, I wouldn't go there. That's the problem. As soon as I know what I'm going to do, I wouldn't do it.
You don't have any clue about what sort of might be. No.
No, I can see that I'm doing something I hadn't done before in my life. Usually when I did something, like I do the first iteration of it, and then I was done, I'm bored, and I went on to something else. And I think maturity is that you gather the benefits or the fruits of your past labors and then try to put them together in something where you take the benefits of all the work you've done and bring it. And maybe I'm doing that a little more consciously than I ever.
So you're not impelled to innovate constantly.
Yeah, to just. And the problem with this, with the fame stuff, is that the pressure is to keep doing it, and you got to avoid that. You got to fight that off.
Everybody's watching to see what you do next.
I can't live by that. So I just.
It's life in the fishbowl.
I know. I hate that. It's nice, but it's tough sometimes. But I think that luckily I'm old enough that I can walk away from it more than maybe other people. When they're young, they get really screwed. They get scared. Success is scary. And people, success is more difficult to deal with than failure, I think.
What?
And so...
it's easy to end up parodying yourself.
Yeah, it is, yeah. And I may, who knows? I mean, this is a chemical thing in here, you know, it's chemicals and
electricity.
Electricity and all kinds of things, and drink enough water and stuff, so you don't know what this thing's going to do. Mm-hmm. It could go a lot of ways. I mean, if I'm lucky, I'll go Matisse. That's my model.
How do you mean?
Well, no, he was doing the cutouts. That was the best thing, you know. When he started doing them, I thought, poor bastard, he's reduced to cutting out paper dolls. And then I realized what he was doing, and that was pretty late in his life. So.
Picasso too ended up trying to draw like a child.
If you're lucky, you keep going, you know. But that depends on chemicals and stuff and wiring that you can't have any control over. So I try to keep in good shape. I work out a lot and get a lot of rest in between plane flights. And, you know, then who knows where I might go. Inspired by nature, and there's infinite form in nature, and there are no rules, because there are enough rules in architecture to keep you on the straight and narrow, as it were. So you're not going to fall out of space. Buildings have to pass muster with the building department, the engineering, and they do have to be budget conscious, and they do have to be buildable in a reasonable length of time, and they have to, I think, respect their neighbors, and they have to give something. And how do you do it? You know, it was an intuitive, kind of off-the-cuff remark, and then so after I said it, I said, yeah, why not? So I started looking at fish drawings. And Hiroshiga, the Japanese woodcut fish, which are the carp, and they're so beautiful and fluid. And I started to look at them as architecture. And I did drawings of fish. I mean, they're funny drawings. They're not anywhere near Hiroshiga. But, and then I started using it. It started to become an emblem against what the other guys were doing. It was against postmodernism. Basically, why not be in it had to be functional, it had to meet budget requirements, you had to work with the client, you have to, and yeah, we had to do that, but then what, I said, but then what? And the then what was like, what does an artist do facing a white canvas? It's then what do I do now? And so I looked for ways to take it somewhere. I was interested in the context of our world, which was filled with movement. It was like an intuitive thing, and I just kept looking.
Frank, you were trained originally as a modernist. What made you go beyond that or develop your own personal style?
You know, I grew up in a Jewish family, and I studied Talmud. And the Talmud starts with why. And I guess I've got that kind of thing built into me that I always question everything. I think what it does is it leads me to respond to the times we're in. I mean, so if whatever I was taught, if it no longer applies, I'm willing to move on. I found that architecture was involved with, it was like a rote, you could say, looking there, making things, and then when the guys started doing the postmodern, I got sort of angry with that. Why do we have to go back there? We've done that already. I thought you guys beat that one up. And you know, and some of my best friends were starting to do it. It just freaked me out. And I thought architecture is anthropomorphic. I thought that if you're going to look back, I got mad. I said, if you're going to look back, why don't you look back before man? Fish are 300 million years. This was intuitive. I didn't plot this in any way. It just came out.